Well, Gary, uh, I'm so sorry that you thought that my input on this was glib. I think your solution is a bit glib. On the other hand, one commenter is like, "Oh, Gary really was, trashed you in his video," which I don't think so. I mean, I measure these things relativistically. I thought your response was fine. I don't really care about the characterizations like that. It's glib. Um, my take is that you don't like to watch people think these issues through. You just want to see them come to your conclusion. So you don't appreciate if someone honestly saying, "Well, here's where I am." You know, if I was on my way to becoming an antinatalist, hey, here's where I'm stuck. Here's the things that I consider a sticking point. For example, I think you're being glib that you can just, you go back and forth. I mean, convincing one person not to have another kid, that's the same net benefit of me just taking myself out of the misery game. And you think that's glib? You know what I've been through. I was telling you a personal thought on it, a personal thought that involves that uh, I am suicidal. Plenty. I've had a lot of suicidal thoughts since my daughter died. When I was young, I decided I did not want to commit suicide. I thought it through, and I think everybody should think that through. I believe the first sentence of Myth of Sisyphus, which is, well, it's around here somewhere, which is that really to be or not to be is the only important philosophical or psychological question. Everything else's importance is in relation to that. And I decided that I did want to live. I did want to try to make the world a better place. All the noise bounces up here. But anyway, um, and as far as I'm concerned, that question has been opened again for a year and a half. Um, you think it's glib? No, I think I understand about the horribleness of life. I mean, I was born into this fractured situation. Um, I feel like I was born on a fissure uh, that was splitting apart as I was born. And, uh, it, from from mindfuck childhood into, as a result, choosing the wrong abusive partner, into having children that I gave everything I could give to, who still wanted to seek out um, a way to deaden their pain. You know, um, I should have kept my children. I think from my ex-wife. That's what I was always accused of, and I was doing the opposite. And I really should have done it. And what I was accused of instead, I should have cut her out of their life, and then maybe my daughter wouldn't have been in so much pain that she wanted to deaden it in a dangerous way. So I don't see this as a glib situation. I think your take is glib. I think a lot of many antinatalists are going to end up having kids, right? You know, I think that's quite likely because people are full of shit. Just because it feels good for them to take a position at a particular point, they get to change their mind, right? Yeah. So I don't consider my take on this at all glib. As a matter of fact, it's quite the opposite. I'm taking your ideas plenty seriously, more seriously than most, and I'm describing to you the catching parts. Okay. One, I don't consider it realistic to convince animals, which humans are, to stop reproducing. Also, as I mentioned, I do think that the parts that we have, there are available parts that something better could be built. But if they're just going to be smothered in these parts that'll never build a decent society, then that's a practical concern. The fact that it's technically possible doesn't mean it's actually possible, that it's actually going to happen. You know, it's technically possible to change the orbit of the Earth, but it's not really practically possible, right? And And you can even say, well, it's not technically possible because you look at all the energy that would have to go in, and how would people feed themselves if they come up with all that energy and use it to move the earth, and then why, and blah, 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 blah. So you can blur the lines between these. And I was trying to make a distinction, though. I, I have worked on teams and been in groups that function well. What I wonder, and this is another sticking point, is that sustainable? On the one hand, if you have, let's say you have a perfectly good group of people acting as a team, uh, they're all different kinds of people, so they have different interests, so they don't all want to live in the exact same place, so they could spread out. There's enough differences in their desires that they can use the differences in the environment and the geography to find their own places, to find not everybody wants to be a nuclear physicist, not everybody wants to be a doctor. Plenty of people don't mind carrying the trash. They might not want to do it for a shitty existence, but it could be part of a system where everybody had a decent existence, a decent home, relatively free of oppression, worries of being raped. Well, I believe such a situation could exist, but if you have it, is it sustainable? Does somebody eventually think they want to try something that they're not suited for, and there's going to be a conflict on that? Or let's say that never happens. What about their children? We don't know how to raise children so that they fit into a system like that. The only success humans have ever had raising children was beating them into believing a dogma so that they followed the rules that kept things strictly going, and yet we haven't had human happiness ever. It's human misery as far as I can tell. That was a system where a minority of people lived very stressful, power-hungry lives on the backs of people that were oppressed and enslaved. So that's not a solution I'm willing to stick with. So as far as I know, yeah, we've never seen a solution. But I do believe the parts are technically there. I just think it's quite doubtful that we'll ever put them together. I don't see the will to do so. Right? If there was a will to do that, yeah. On the other hand, something that I mentioned in my video, and that I've mentioned to you before, and I think you try to skirt around, is that I think it's a minority of people creating the rape and war and slavery. Okay, I don't think the majority of people are creating that. They're enabling it maybe, and helping to perpetuate it through their decision of who they want to lead them. A lot of people seem to think that that's necessary, that kind of system, to keep going, and they don't know that that's what they're advocating. They just advocate parts of it, like, they want pathological, psychotic narcissists to run the show, which they just for some reason feel is necessary, and they don't know that that decision is the same as saying we need war and slavery in order to survive. All right, so those are the pieces of the puzzle that are difficult for me. Your choice of the word glib is probably inappropriate. I am discussing this from a direct point of view, not rhetorically how to convince you guys, but what I'm actually thinking about the subject, so that you can know, right? So that you can know, so you could take it into account. Not so that you can adopt it, maybe just so that you can come up with the proper counter argument. Because you say, oh, you can make a difference and convince one couple not to have kids. Well, really? I didn't demonstrate that. Maybe if you had a convincing demonstration that that's possible. Who has done that? What couple have you convinced? I haven't seen it. Not saying it didn't happen, but maybe you could illustrate that. I'm not even saying you should. I'm just saying these are the kinds of benefits you can get from listening to other people's point of view. A lot of people don't want to listen to other people's point of view. But if you're just going to want to see people at your conclusion, and you don't want to see them going towards your conclusion, well, I guess you're screwed because they're not starting out at your conclusion. We're barely at the point where people uh, may be able to live lives where they're not pressured and insulted for not having kids, right? Um, Now, I'm someone that's had kids, and I've described to you many of the reasons, and those could be that could be information that you could use to understand what you're up against, and that you choose not to use the information that way, and act like your reason for not using that information that way is because, by God, you should just think through and come to my conclusion already. Well, you're kind of glib because you're not facing what you're really up against. So, on the other hand, I thought your response was fine, but it just seems to me that you're the stubborn one that doesn't want to look at this problem in all of its parts. And you're going to trivialize something uh, like this idea that even though entropy always increases, you can't create a device like a refrigerator where you can control entropy. So in the universe, things fall apart. That doesn't mean we have to have slavery, right? It doesn't mean we have to have war. It doesn't mean we have to have so much rape, right? It doesn't mean that, right? It means that everything's mortal. It means the universe is going to, fall apart at some point on its own. It's going to freeze, or it's going to recollapse and burn up. Something is like this is going to happen. But even that is only to the degree that we've really found the principles, and it looks like we constantly have to keep adjusting how we think things work. So there's a lot of room in that adjustment, right? So the idea that, hey, people might say, well, you know what? Life is absurd, but it doesn't mean we couldn't create a situation on Earth with human management that wouldn't strike us as so absurd. A closed system, a subset system, and it's a subset. Why? Well, because we haven't solved the problem on other planets. We might not have solved the problem. We might not have solved the problem for all time, right? And that's an idea that you don't engage with directly. You're glib about it. Right? You just go, well, it's obvious. It's not obvious to everybody. Even if you're writing it with the idea that it should be obvious, then you should probably engage with the thinking that other people are dealing with that makes it seem less obvious. And you certainly can't tell me that I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, I think a lot of the anti-natalists come from pretty um, lives that went smoothly enough that they're not dealing with that they're able to be glib, right? Because when you have this mind fuck or kind of terrible situation, you go to some Bangladesh, seeing people, they don't have the luxury of that. They have to fight so hard to survive that they train themselves to fight to survive, and it becomes alien, the idea that survival itself is the problem, right? When you have to fight really hard to survive, you don't grow a mindset that makes, hey, just stop surviving, just give up, because if you just gave up, you wouldn't be alive to ask the question. So in order to ask the question, if you're starting off from a difficult situation, in order to ask the question, you already have to have developed a strong will and strength to survive. Okay, and that's really what you're up against, right? The people in the really terrible situations have to have the strongest will to survive. So it's going to be a lot easier to get someone like Heroin Church on your side because he didn't have to develop a will to survive in order to survive. He's just carried through. You don't understand that? Maybe you're being glib, dude.